Hey, everybody. So I know that I said that I would do this on Facebook Live. Facebook Live has been acting up today, and I am actually getting ready to head out on a trip. So I need to go ahead and make sure that this is going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and do this as a pre-record. I've got a whiny Labrador who's bumping my laptop. So if she makes her appearance, you'll know why. So I had a few questions here I wanted to kind of dive into. A couple of them get into the specifics of Bootcamp. So if you're actively in the Bootcamp, you can ask the questions that you wanted to ask there in the Bootcamp Q&A, and we'll be more than happy to address those. But there are some specifics there that are things that we do within the Bootcamp or things that we recommend within the Bootcamp that I'm not going to go into. So if I skip your question and you're in the current boot camp or a graduate of a previous boot camp, you're welcome to ask those questions in the appropriate groups. So the question in here, it's not so much boot camp specific, but it is something that's interesting. It says, I currently use a PhD diet, whey protein after a workout. Would you recommend to change it? It's not so much the carbohydrate content that bothers me with that product. It's the fact that their protein is touted as somehow magically diet inducing. I'm not really sure that I understand the point of using the term diet protein. That doesn't make any sense to me. And then secondarily, that the protein formulation just seems to be whatever protein powders they had lying around on the floor, they swept together and said, here is a proprietary blend. And the reason that companies use proprietary blends, you'll hear the term prop blend, which is just a shortened version of it, is because those can be protected. They can be legally protected so that no one can copy that. And then you can effectively go out there and solicit, shall we say, less than scrupulous researchers to justify health claims that you want to make about your trademarked product. And then all of a sudden your trademark product becomes something that commands a value proposition in the market because you can make health claims that are inherently unfounded, for lack of a better term. Should you change it? Probably, but not for any other reason than the fact that the contents or the composition is kind of garbage. I'm not a big fan of plant-based proteins in general, with the exception of people who are dedicated to living a vegetarian or a vegan existence. And quite frankly, even in those instances, the protein is poor, and you're going to need to consume more of it to maximally stimulate the leucine threshold to actually build muscle. There's a question about if I'm already training with a personal trainer, what should I do? So I'll go ahead and tell you, and Luis and I share a pretty similar philosophy on this. I won't tell anybody how to spend their money. Full stop. This is something that you need to make a decision as to whether you want to do or not. With regard to working out with a trainer, you have a choice to make. If you want to do our program, it is not something we typically recommend or permit folks to share with people outside of the boot camp. And so we don't really want you going, here, trainer, here's my program, put me through the paces. If for no other reason than on at least 2 or 3 instances that I'm aware of where that's actually happened, the folks have come back and said, yeah, I screwed up because I noticed my trainer was using your program and putting people through it. And that just seems no bueno. So there are, unfortunately, some unscrupulous folks or maybe folks who see competent programming and decide that that's the thing that they want to use. And so they just basically rip off any good program that they find and pass it off as their own. So with regard to how to handle that situation, ultimately that's your call. We have had some folks to sort of break up with their trainer for a period of time to try something different. And any trainer who's worth their salt will understand that there are times, periods, and cycles in life where you want to go through and try something different, see if it works a little better, a little worse, or about the same, and then make a decision after the fact. If you get the hard press or the hard sell from that trainer when you bring the issue up, it's usually going to be evidence or indication that you probably need to run away from that trainer. That doesn't mean necessarily you need to run toward boot camp. Like I said, that's your choice, but I don't sell people, and most of the trainers with whom I'm friends and who I think are competent don't either, because they don't have to. They're not desperate to keep you as a client. They want you to be happy enough that you stay as a client. Does this include a meal plan for you to follow, or do we have to eat up a set list of foods that fit into our macros? So there are some foods that are no-goes, and that would be provided to you as part of a pre-boot camp manual when you decide to go ahead and enroll. Ultimately, we do, for returning boot camp members, offer a select number of folks, just because of the limits of human capital, to actually spend the time to make the meal plans, options for meal plans. But I joke sometimes with people who are actively after fat loss as their goal. How many different ways can I say, eat your veggies, eat chicken, eat tuna, eat some white fish, lean proteins and veggies and lean proteins. With respect to the flavor palette, I mean, there's also different things you can do there with respect to sauces and seasonings and that sort of thing. You can rotate through some different vegetables to introduce some different micronutrient composition to your diet. But we do not, for part of the boot camp program, offer a meal plan in the sense of eat this much at this time of this thing. Honestly, we tried it initially and we didn't really see the benefit of doing so, because people tend to, and a lot of folks who've been at this for a while, when you're eating kind of poverty macros, if you will, the deficit macros, if fat loss is your ultimate goal, they tend to default to maybe the same 6 or 7 or 10 meals that they kind of know by heart, and they just eat those over and over and over. They become a little bit sick. Robotic is probably a pejorative version of the word that I would want to use here, but they become kind of robotic or systematic in the way that they eat, knowing that this is kind of a decision for time, not a decision for eternity. Sorry, my dog is having a hissy fit right now. There's a question about pak choi and mangatout. I'm probably butchering the names. Basically, there's also a question, is bacon okay for keto? Foods, everything is keto friendly if you slice it thin enough. I want to start there. That doesn't necessarily make it a good idea. It just makes it a true statement. It's not about whether you can, it's about whether you should. And that's the problem that a lot of people have, is they don't ask the right question. They don't ask the question, should I eat this? They want to ask the question, can I eat this? You can eat anything you want. It gets down to words having power and word choice. If you choose to eat it because it either aligns or doesn't align with your goals, then that's going to be ultimately your decision. Bacon is delicious, and I'm sure that properly prepared, I think those are maybe the Vietnamese cuisine names for the pak choi and the mangatout or whatever. But what I would tell you is this: if those foods make it harder to hit your macros and elicit the results that you desire to elicit with your goals or within your goals or your framework for what you want to accomplish, then no, they're not friendly. They're fine for keto. They're not fine for context. If those foods work and you can get them in or work them in with regard to your activity level, your health situation, your ultimate goals, your time frame, all of those things that are driving the context of you, then by all means work them in. Generally speaking, some of the challenging foods that we see are cheeses and nuts, just because they're super, super high calorie. And people don't tend to weigh, measure, or track them. They just sort of estimate how much they've eaten, and that becomes kind of a problem. There's a question here. It's a little complex, so I'm going to try and distill it down. If you happen to go over one day on calories or macros, let's say by 200 calories, is it best to make sure those calories or macros, best to make sure to cut those calories or macros the following day or within the week? For example, 50 calories here and 20 calories there add up. And they give a hypothetical here that 350 calories a week, which would be 50 calories per day, 1,400 calories per month is 84,000 calories per year, or in perfect math land, about 20 or 24 pounds of potential estimation error there. Here would be my statement. If you're 50 calories over every day, you don't have a math problem, you have a planning problem. you're never going to get it exactly right. What I mean by that is that calorie data is generally given a pretty wide berth for accuracy, and there's actually some valid reasoning for that, not the least of which is foods grown in different soils has some variability with respect to nutrient content. And secondarily, that the seasonality or the season in which it's grown tends to have some implication or some impact on its nutrient values as well. So you're really only ever going to get about 80% accuracy out of nutritional labels in general. One of the things that I said to Mark Bell while we were sitting talking a while back, before we were doing the Powercast, the episode that I did, was you don't throw away a poor measure for no measure at all. And that's kind of the thing with calories. They're going to get you directionally accurate, and then you kind of rely on the law of large numbers to sort of get you back to the mean value of those calories when you consider your caloric intake over time. But if you are consistently overeating, you are going to have a bad outcome. And that bad outcome is not because you're not playing puts and takes with the calories over the course of a week or a month or a year. The issue is because you're failing to plan. And in failing to plan, you're preparing yourself to have, at best, a slower result than you would have had otherwise, or at worst, no result or a negative result. That being said, yeah, you could absolutely do this where you maybe have higher calorie days and lower calorie days as part of a cycle, or you adjust your calories up or down to try and hit a weekly goal. And I don't really have a conceptual problem with it, except I would do it as a practice of intention. I would not do it as a practice of, oh crap, like after the fact self-flagellation, if you will, because when you go down that pathway, it becomes really a chasing after the wind. You'll have folks who maybe overate and went crazy at the buffet eating pizza, and then for the next 6 days, I'm going to fast to make up for the 22,000 calories that I ate during this window of time. Then after about the second or third day of fasting, they get super hungry. Blood glucose goes in the toilet. Ketones are super high. They start to feel really kind of that nauseating grind in their stomach. What do? They go out or they go into the kitchen and they begin to eat, and they eat and eat and eat. And so it becomes this cycle of sort of sinning and then seeking absolution from the sin, or making some kind of deal with the devil. And unfortunately, those situations end very poorly for most people. There are some folks who can keep it, kind of right between the pipes. But there are some that can't. There was a question here: why do you make it so difficult to find out the price? We really don't. We don't publicly advertise the price without requiring you to go to the website, to ketogainsbootcamps.com, and click the button for whichever bootcamp you're interested in. It's literally type in the address or just click on the address and then click on the enrollment button, and the price is displayed right there. What people typically get a little more upset about is that during the periods when the boot camps are not open for enrollment, we don't have a way currently to disclose that price. That's something we're working on right now as part of a redesign of the overall website and the information that we provide. However, we are not going to ever disclose that price as sort of a big, all this for the low price of boom price point, for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is when we did that in the past, we had several instances where people would basically get taken for a ride by people, and I'm going to use coaches in quotation marks here, who basically took their money and disappeared and never provided them anything, or basically went and badly photoshopped over the top of somebody else's boilerplate program and sent it to them and said, here's your training program, have a great life. In all of those instances, those people, at least the ones that we're aware of, those people felt completely cheated, and I totally understand that. And because we want to take care of our community and be a force for positive change, we stepped in and actually put those people through our boot camp on our own dime. And so what I would say is this: we want to be supportive. We want to be those people that help you to kind of move towards your goals, and we want to provide a very high quality product that will help them move you there and teach and coach you along the way. Unfortunately, every bit of that effort and energy is actually time away from friends, family, sorry guys, friends, family, etc. And so there are some cost to that from our perspective, in the same sense as that there are going to be costs from your perspective as well. And so, the other thing that I would say there with regard to the price point is this: there is a lot of effort that's required to be successful in any journey of self-change or physical change. And it doesn't necessarily come easy. And so one of the things that we opted to do here is to kind of make this a bit of a Brown M&M clause, if I'm being really honest. It's also, hey, people that are willing to go through the effort to go and look and see, and if it's available, click the button and see the price, or go to their their email and send us an email at info@ketogains.com and say, hey, tell me about the program, what's the price, etc. Those are the people who, and we actually track this because I'm a nerd for this kind of thing. We actually tracked it and saw that people have it's a pretty linear relationship. The people that were willing to do the work to get into the program are the people who seem to have the best successes. Sorry, this dog is driving me crazy. And so I would simply tell you that is why. It's kind of multifaceted, but the least of which would be to simply say, we do our very best to make it not that difficult to find, but also difficult enough that scammers and fake coaches are not going to take you guys for a ride by just finding it out and doing the Earl Scheib model of selling it for $10 cheaper than anybody else. There was a question in here also about what we mean by fat as a lever. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So what we mean by that is this. So protein requirements are actually pretty fixed. Your needs for protein are not, sorry, dog, go away. Protein requirements are pretty fixed. And that's true almost irrespective of, what you do. There's a little bit of an added need for protein for people who are moving up in age, for people who may have certain digestive or gut issues in general. There are also some increased requirements for people who are new to training and who are pretty actively or pretty heavily training, but they're not huge. If you want to be ketogenic or you want to eat low carb, you're going to have to limit carbohydrates. So unless we start introducing alcohol as a fuel substrate, which is a little bit counterintuitive, we have to modulate fat intake to try and elicit an outcome, because calories and the total caloric load or energy value of your diet do matter. And quite frankly, based on what we've seen, they seem to matter the most. So what I would simply say is this. What we mean by fat as a lever is that if your intention is to lose body fat, you are going to need to eat an overall caloric load that is less than what you are expending in the course of any day-to-day basis. However, if your intention is to maintain, you're going to try and get those on equal footing with regard to your output and your intake. If you are trying to bulk, sorry, my dog is literally moving my laptop here. If your intention is to bulk, then you're going to need to exceed your caloric expenditure with regard to your caloric intake. Now, what are the relative puts and takes that go into the calories in and the calories outside of that equation? That's the whole concept of an energy balance model. Little pro tip, I'm actually in the process of penciling out a future series of articles to go into some depth about the different inputs and output factors that affect the energy balance model. So be on the lookout for that over the next probably 3 to 6 months, but hopefully that'll help to quell some of the insanity around CICO and straw man arguments and all that sort of stuff. But all that being said is to simply say that fat is the one macronutrient that we can lever up or lever down to try and affect a result. And that's all it really means. It's not super complicated. We don't mean it as anything other than, hey, you want to gain? Increase fat. You want to lose? Decrease fat. That's pretty much the extent of it. Those are really the chief questions that I have. When I post this, I'm actually going to do this. I'm actually going to turn this into a Q&A. So what I mean is this: if you have questions that didn't get asked in time, if you want to know something about Bootcamp that we didn't cover in this video, go ahead and drop that question in the comment section of this, and we will do our very best to get you an answer in the next day or so. Do understand that we are actively responding to clients right now because the weekends are our busiest time of the day, or this time of the week rather, but we will definitely get you some answers pretty quickly. As of the time that I'm recording this, we are about 72 or 73% full for new client intake. So if you are somebody who has not done a boot camp before and you are somebody who is interested in doing this boot camp, you probably need to get on the stick pretty quickly. At this point, it's looking like probably the end of next week is going to be about the time that we completely sell out of new spots, and we'll have to go onto a wait list. So just a quick heads up on that. That will probably be up around 75%, give or take, by the end of this weekend. So anyhow, looking forward to July. Thank you guys for listening to me ramble a little bit here. Sorry for a little bit of the confusion with regard to the Facebook Live. That was frustrating, but it is what it is. Technology is great when it works, and it's a frustrating turd when it doesn't. Talk to you guys later. Bye.